Good afternoon, Amy. We're
Hi.
interviewing Amy Powers, who's been involved in some very interesting shows and had some interesting things happen in her life. You want to give us an idea, Amy, what your interest was in theater early in your life?
My interest in theater, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Bruce. But I have to say that when I was younger, unlike many people who ended up in musical theater, I didn't really have any idea that I was going to be one of those people. I think my early experiences included hearing Gilbert and Sullivan sung in my car with my dad, and being in the 5th and 6th grade productions of Lil Abner and The Music Man, respectively, in my elementary school. And then things went dark for many, many years. So it was as much of a surprise to me as to anybody that I ended up doing theater at all, actually. I was in a completely different career on a completely different path.
But were you headed for being a lawyer when you entered your first college?
Well, actually, I was a lawyer already when I discovered that I was also a lyricist, right? So in my background, and it's not too usual, although, who's the guy who wrote City of Angels?
Psycho.
No, the lyricist.
David Zippel.
Yes, David Zippel is the only other guy I know who went to Harvard Law School and then wrote a Broadway show. That I know. There may be others, I don't know. But in my life, I had just a couple of signals that maybe I'd be interested in writing at all before I graduated law school and business school and started to work as a lawyer in Manhattan. So I did have this little toe in the water when I did my high school applications for college in Limerick, but Limerick's not lyrics. It's just something interesting with words, right? And then it really wasn't until I had started working as a lawyer in a really big firm and I got chronic fatigue syndrome and was forced to the sidelines work-wise. And somebody that I was living with at the time mentioned to me that I might, quote unquote, have fun writing a song for musical theater. That's when it all started. And they say, write what you know. So I wrote a song about paralegals. And
tell us about what your parents' attitude was when you were thinking of leaving the law.
You're a parent. What would you think if your kid went to 7?
I love musicals. I would encourage you.
Well, my parents loved musicals, but they also loved the idea of me having a steady job. And those things seemed to be in contradiction to each other. So actually, what they did was they decided to call a family member of theirs, my aunt. She was on a board with Jerry Schoenfeld, the guy who ran the Schubert organization. May he rest in peace. He brought us tremendous amount of terrific work. And she said to him, Jerry, my niece, I think she's kind of lost it. She thinks she wants to step away from law and become a songwriter. Can you just see her and tell her to keep her day job?
Right. So the cold
and
facts,
he did. He saw me.
Tell her the cold facts of the odds against her.
Well, let's be clear. The odds for anybody succeeding in a significant way in musical theater, they're not that big. You have to do it for love. You have to do it out of obsession. You have to be doing this because you can't do anything else. And that was the place that I was in, because I woke up suddenly to a talent that I felt I was called onto this planet to utilize, as opposed to what I was doing being a lawyer, which was something a lot of people could do. There are thousands of lawyers.
So after he tried to dissuade you, what did he say next?
Oh, Jerry? He was really funny. He said, okay, well, I'm here to tell you to keep your day job. Now show me what you've got. So I did. And which was, by the way, all of the one song that I'd written about the paralegal and some parodies that I had from when I was trying to keep myself amused in business school and law school. So nothing nothing professional. And it was really interesting what happened. You know, he asked me privately to write on a number of subjects. He would give me, I don't know, he would say, write a song about June, write a song about moon, you know, and then I would write something, just lyrics. And he had me doing those for a while, a number of months. And then he came to me and he told me that he was introducing me to a few different people. And he actually introduced me to 3 people, one of whom was not interested in working with me, which was a shame because that was Alan Menken. One of whom was interested in working with me, and we went a little ways down the road, a guy who was Vladimir Feltman, who was a classical pianist who had a really interesting musical idea. And then one day out of the blue, I got this call from this guy in London, and I thought it was a prank. But it wasn't a prank, it was Andrew Lloyd Weber. And he was inviting me to come write a show with him, which was kind of crazy. But that's what happened.
He must have been somewhat friendly with Gerald Schoenfeld.
Yes, Jerry, well, Andrew Lloyd Weber had shows in Schubert theaters. So they were, I would say, more than friendly. I would say they were in bed together in a business sense.
He must have said, grab Amy, she's on the way to something.
I don't know what the actual conversation was, but I do know that that Andrew saw some of the stuff that I'd written. And at the time, between the time that I'd started writing these things for Jerry and the time that I got that call from Andrew, I had begun the musical theater workshop at BMI. So
they gave you Monday afternoon off from the law firm.
So yes, they did. Yes, I had, it's so interesting. The people's fate can depend on one person believing in them. And I had one person, my boss, a wonderful lawyer named Roxanne McCarthy. And I said to her, hey, Roxanne, I've got this crazy thing. I know it's a little weird to bring up, but I have this passion that I've developed for writing songs. Would you mind very much if I just took Monday afternoons off and went to this workshop? And she said, sure, you can do that as long as you get your work done. I don't really care when you do it.
So you sometimes stayed a little later to catch up on Monday?
Oh, please. All the billable hours that were put in, it's beyond comprehension. But the interesting thing was the BMI musical theater workshop really shaped my understanding of theater because I was a novice. I had, unlike a lot of the people who do that program, and if anybody's listening to this conversation, they may well know some people who've done the program. And there's some really terrific composers and lyricists who've come through that program. But, they taught everything, structure, what songs were for, how to approach the entire enterprise, and they paired you up with collaborators. It was an amazing thing. So by the time that I was called on that crazy call, I had experienced some collaboration, which was good because when I started
an entire work, sometimes they say, do War and Peace.
Well, I had written one, which was Dangerous Liaisons as a musical. And that was something that was done for class, but then ended up being produced down at NYU. So that was kind of crazy. A lot of things, when something's right and you're supposed to be moving in a certain direction, you get signs. So the fact that we took something from the classroom and brought it to a real stage.
You also had Cinderella. Did Cinderella not also come?
No, that was actually later. That was actually later. Yeah.
Well, had you met
your homework?
Had you met David Levy? Where did you meet David Levy?
Oh, you don't mean David Levy? You mean Dan Levy?
Dan, okay, Dan.
Dan Levy.
Levy.
He was someone from that workshop.
You had
No,
two productions going on. Very few people are in the BMI workshop and have two productions within such a short time.
yeah, and then that crazy thing that happened with Sunset Boulevard and Andrew Lloyd Webber in smack in between, because I took some time off and I left the country to do that.
But did he
So
literally invite you for a period? What was his invitation initially?
Andrew, I think he said, I have a ticket on the Concorde. Can you come over for the weekend to France? He has a place in the south of France. So of course I thought it was a prank call, right? But I did it, and before I did it, I had probably 2 or 3 days, and I actually had to go and watch all the shows that I'd never seen that were his, because I was really a Sondheim fan. There was a big schism between the Andrew Lloyd Webber-ites and the Sondheim-ites, and I think
I can say I know nothing of Cats. I never heard of it. What is that?
I really had never seen it. Like I said, I got into the game late. I was almost 30 years old before I wrote my first song. So I had some catching up to do.
So you're in France, and things must have gone well in France.
Things went well in France. Then I moved to London to live. I actually lived with Andrew at his house in Eaton Square for a while, and then I got my own place. We were writing Sunset Boulevard. The crazy thing about it is, for some reason, he thought that we could do it without having a book writer. And I didn't have any experience in book writing, and I had zero experience as a professional lyricist. So that altogether was a little bit crazy from the start. But this was his vision, and he is nothing if not clear about his vision at any particular time. So it was pretty wild.
How did the process start? How quickly did you?
Oh my gosh. Did we start doing it? Well, to be honest, he had this idea for a long time, and he had some tunes, as composers often do, right? And he showed and played me things, and had a couple of key scenes that he had already envisioned with music to be plugged in. And so for me, there was a fill in the blank. What are the words to these songs? There was that aspect of it. And then there was this whole other thing, how to create.
You the situation. This is where Norma goes to the studio?
Pretty much. Although a lot of it was not sketched out at all. You know how composers often get a vision of something, a scene, a something that sparks them. And then they have no idea what happens until some other point. I don't think that most creatives are linear, and he was no exception in that regard. I think the crazy thing was trying to work to create the book of a musical when I didn't have any experience in that. So,
but did you work at the same time on the book as you were writing lyrics?
He wanted us to write the book together, but neither of us were really book writers. So yeah, we did, and very often he would give me a melody, and then I'd come back with a number of options, because I'm like that. The way I like to work is collaboratively. I'll say, Bruce, I have 3 ideas for this. Which one hits you in your heart the most? Unfortunately, what I didn't know is that he had never worked with someone in that way before. He hadn't worked with a lot of what I was. He hadn't worked with an American. He hadn't worked with a woman before. We communicated differently. So when I was offering him these options, he was expecting me to come with one thing, like this is good.
No options.
No options. So, and what happened, it's, some people trust their own gut, and some people want to bounce things off other people. I remember him coming to me once and saying, one day he said, "Oh my goodness, I love this. This is fantastic." I can't even remember which song it was. He said, "This is really great." The next day, he came back and said, literally, "I played this for my mother-in-law. She didn't like it. we have to toss it.
And the mother-in-law was not in the show business.
No, no. So, stuff happens. And for me, it was really terrific. I think the best part, a piece of advice that I got from Jerry Schoenfeld, may he rest in peace, was when I got the job, he said, just hang on for as long as you can. It's going to be like a bucking bronco. So I did. And it was literally my first rodeo.
Was the idea early on to do it at a summer place?
Oh yeah, Sidmonton, that was his test ground. So yeah, the idea was to do it in Sidmonton, and we did.
How long did you have to get ready for this whole show?
I don't know.
5-6 months?
Maybe the greater part, maybe a little less than a year, and then we did that. And at a certain point, after that, he did something that really made me happy, which was he brought in Don Black as a co-lyricist. For me, this was fantastic because I had a playmate who was fun and funny and really experienced in not only the craft of musical theater, but the politics and business of musical theater. So Don and I got together every day and played and worked, and it was great. Hung out with his family, the whole thing. So we had a great time creating together. And that was probably my favorite part, was when I was working with a collaborator, because that's what I really am at heart. I'm someone who likes to play. And Andrew was much less about play. Don was all about.
Was he happy that the two of you would work on something and then he would hear it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way we did it. And there still was no book writer. So crazy.
But on to when do you think you had a book ready for your production?
Well, we had a script that we wrote. I don't know. We did it, but it wasn't the same as having.
Did you take anything from the movie? Was every line of dialogue in the movie?
I think we had the rights to take whatever we wanted from the movie, but movies aren't musicals. Truthfully, as a matter of fact, my husband, who's a film producer, just did a musical movie, but it's still, now that it's going to be brought to stage, it's going to be very different. You can't just put one onto the other. So it didn't do us all that much good.
Was Billy Wilder involved at any time?
No. But what was really interesting was what happened later, because I think as unexpected as getting the job was, getting fired from the job was even more or equally unexpected. And it taught me so much about the business of musical theater, right? Or the business of anything, actually. You really always have to imagine that what you think is happening is not necessarily the thing that's happening. So we worked on this and we fixed it up. And then I got sent home for a 2-week vacation. And then I read in the New York Times that I'd been fired. And I didn't even know if it was true. And neither did Andrew's office when I called. But it turns out that it was true, which was highly unfortunate for me, especially because I wasn't treated particularly well during the process. But after that, they brought in Christopher Hampton as a book writer, and then he began to massage some of the lyrics too. So he ended up with, I believe he ended up with credit for both book and co-write lyrics. Yeah, and I am a footnote in that.
With the janitorial supplies.
I actually have to be listed every time. They couldn't take my work out completely because it was foundational to the show. Some of it was foundational to the show.
These are major songs.
Yeah, the ones that everybody knows. As if never said goodbye.
hit songs by Amy Powers.
Yeah. And with one look.
Well, you said
But
Don Black was great at a slight title change, that you loved what he did. You don't recall the original?
Yes. You know, Don had this amazing knack for writing catchy titles that summed things up. And I just remember walking through Hyde Park with him one day, talking about the song that would become As If We Never Said Goodbye, but we didn't have the title yet. And we talked about all these ideas about how the verses could progress and what they'd be talking about. And then the next morning he woke up and called me and said, I've got it, this is it, right? This is the title that crystallized everything. And I think a lot of that is because he also thinks in a pop way. And that's what Andrew liked about him too, because Andrew was, even though he was huge musical theater composer, was always wondering how he could get songs on the radio. So he wanted the pop version. He wanted things that could stand alone. He wanted things that would sound like you'd see them in the top 40 listed. So As If We Never Said Goodbye was one of those things. And I admired Don for his ability to synthesize all the things that we were talking about and then give us something that we could write around.
Now, how many performances were at Symington? Is it
Sydmonton?
Sydmonton.
A handful.
But
it's a testing ground.
Tell us who the two stars were. I
only remember Michael Ball, who was this great guy, star in England.
Patti LuPone.
No. Elaine Page?
I thought there's a video. I swear there's a video with Patti.
You know, they did it the second
afterwards. No, they did it again.
Yeah, we only did the first act in Sydmonton when I was working on the show.
So she didn't shoot anybody for the beginning. She did, but
right, yeah.
Was the idea of the car on video and everything, was that talked about earlier?
I think that was later, you know. So and that's, you know. I
once saw in Barrington, where you spent some time, they had an estate and they did a Houdini musical, and he came in a fancy car up the driveway and came through the doors to the thing. That was very impressive.
Stagecraft always amazes me. Right. It's, you know, it's the Harry Potter of it all, if you've seen that. There's my son. So I just have to tell you, I'm waving to my son because I did apparently pass down some genetic material to my 22-year-old, who's now a composer, producer, not musical theater yet, but many other genres. It's really exciting.
Okay,
just waved.
So you only found out that you assumed you were going to New York and you'd be coming back within a couple of weeks.
I generally believe what I'm told.
Right.
So that's what I was told. It was a real turning point. And interestingly, it did not leave a really good taste in my mouth about writing for theater. And I did Cinderella as a sort of, which was a panto, you know, that really fun in New York City. I did that with Dan Levy because I needed some way to just heal a little bit, just work some stuff out and feel like I still liked writing. But Andrew's choice to talk about what the pop version of everything was is actually what led me into writing for pop music. So after that happened with Sunset Boulevard, and while we were still in dramatic discord with attorneys and this and that, I decided that I was going to become a pop writer. That led me to becoming a country writer. That led me to becoming an animation writer. That led me to write for K-pop, film and TV, a whole bunch of other things that I probably never would have done. So it's the When Wonder Closes.
You did a Barbie or two?
Yeah, I loved doing that. So I wrote for the Barbie movies for about 10 years. And actually, it was someone from the BMI Musical Theater Workshop that I did that with, Megan Cavallari. So we were brought in by someone from Mattel because they were looking for people who could do a musical theater kind of influenced show for some of these Barbie fairy tale movies. And so that was great because I got to go back to that first love of theater, but have an audience around the world in many, many, many languages. I only had to write it in English, but 20 something languages, millions of girls and their moms listening over and over and over to these songs. That was delicious, really fun, really, really fun period. And, you know, you have a lot of influence when kids are young to teach them about the way you hope the world will be. So a lot of the songs that we were allowed to write were friendship songs, world healing songs, how to be a good person songs. So that was really fun.
Sort of like Sesame Street. Did they hold up Sesame Street as an example?
That's such an interesting question, Bruce. No, although the target audience is about the same. It's about 3 to 7. But I think they were looking to be aspirational so that the girls would feel like they were getting older kinds of songs. Sesame Street is very, treat the kids like they're
You're learning, we're teaching you. We're definitely teaching you.
Right. This was a little bit more, you know, pop with morality and magic.
And what is a favorite song from that series?
Oh my goodness. There's a song called, I'll sing it. I'm just like you, you're just like me. It's I Am a Girl Like You. And it's a song about a princess. It's sort of Princess and the Pauper. So there's 2 girls and one's actually, you know, taking the place of the other in the palace. And they realize that they're the same. They each get to mirror each other and see how really underneath all the trappings, they are completely alike. And listen, in this world, when we are all focused on the differences between us, it's really sometimes nice to remember how much the same we are.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, Dangerous Liaisons turned into the game or the games?
The game. That was with Megan as well.
So this is NYU was before Andrew, but the productions in the Berkshires.
It went later, right? So we had this thing that we had started at BMI that later got picked up by Berkshire Theater Company, and it was great. You know, by Barrington Stage. Sorry, and it got picked up by Barrington Stage, and you know, we did it twice. One production. We had, do you know who Sara Ramirez is? She's a big star now.
I was told by somebody else who can confirm this that she unfortunately did not want to do it in New York, and that was a big stumbling block.
It didn't help. It didn't help.
She was wonderful in it.
Huh? She was amazing. So we had Julianne Boyd was our producer and director as well, because she owned the theater. And I remember when Sara walked into the room, you know how people talk about star quality? I always thought that was some kind of myth. But when Sara walked into the room, it was like the energy changed in a magnificent way. I saw someone, presence that I had never seen before. It was regal. It was magnetic. It was everything you'd ever hope for in a star. And she owned that part. She elevated that part for
Did,
us.
did the show change considerably from NYU?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We had this great collaborator, David Topchick, and he actually co-wrote the book and the lyrics. And by the way, that's again, I think for me, I love creative collaboration. So having David was terrific. Just like when I got to write Dr. Zhivago, I had Michael Corey to bounce things off of. There's something about it for me. I don't see writing as a completely solitary thing. I think of it more like a tennis game. I'll bat you a draft, you bat me something back, and sometimes in the same room. A lot of the time in the same room. So we had a great time working on that show. It's unfortunate that it never got a New York run. And who knows? It's never too late.
That's so good.
It is never too late.
The rest of the cast was wonderful. And there was talk at one point, because I loved the first one, and then I heard they're doing it again. So I said, I'll go up to see it again. And I talked to Megan, and she said, oh, I think maybe I'll record this with that cast. And then it was deemed to be too expensive or difficult to do that in the Berkshires.
Yes. That is the trick of it. The problem of cast recordings are often prohibitively expensive, even though they're the things that could take something to the next level. So, and usually when you record just in the space off the board of what you're, the soundboard, you don't get the same quality. People who are potential investors in a show do not get the same concept of what it's about. They don't get that same experience.
I'm guessing not too many people go to the Berkshires. Well, Berkshires is a nice place to go during the summer. Did you not get wealthy people coming to?
Oh, we got all kinds of people coming. But for any show it's a miracle when any show gets done. As I'm sure you know, right? Everything has to line up just right for that to happen.
But was Jerome Schoenfeld not around? Why did he not? So I know he and I believe, are the only two people who went to Paris to see a Moore.
Wow.
It was done like in a school. It was not done in a Paris theater. Yeah. It was done like in a school.
Wow.
And he just said, I don't know if he went there with the idea that he might like it, but it was all him. And he said there's going to be a cast album. I thought it was going to be with me. That I learned that, well, I was told it was going to be with me for one reason or another. I don't know why. It was with a different record company, but I'm happy it got recorded.
Yeah. Well, look, you have all the experience in records. So you know how challenging it is to make sure the pieces line up for people, especially cost-wise.
Tell us about Lizzie Borden. I think that's the only where we have to get to Dr. Zhivago. That's an epic in all ways.
Lizzie Borden, I just had a great time writing it. God, Chris.
How did you get with Christopher McGovern?
How did I get with Christopher McGovern? Was Chris part of the workshop too? It is possible. It is possible. You know what? It's so long ago that I don't know. I just remember having a great time with Chris. He has terrific energy and that kind of playful energy. And Bill Castellino too, who was, so much more than a director to us. I just had a blast doing that. And it was, their idea. It was not my idea. A lot of things that I've come in on, not my idea, just helping somebody else realize their vision. But Chris was adamant about this being a musical, and he was right. And I loved it. That was one of the most fun.
Was Fairleigh Dickinson the first place it was done?
God, I think you tell me.
You had to walk over a bridge to get there.
I don't think it was.
Theater.
was it Fairleigh Dickinson?
Some
You tell me.
university, I thought it was fairly
It was a university, and it was in Jersey.
right.
But I'm not sure.
But then,
You know, when I moved to LA, I lost New York. I lost the East Coast. I became so immersed in the pop and animation of it all that some of those things are just like, oh, they happened in the past, and that's all. And I know they happen.
another lifetime. You're young, but you're still
Well,
alive.
yeah. You know, different people have different views about how different experiences of how they live their lives. Mine is always a chapter and then another chapter and then another chapter, right?
Right.
So I know some people who have amazingly great recollections of every single thing that happened at every single time. For me, if it wasn't super dramatic, it just sort of went into that chapter. Make sense?
Right. But
Yeah.
I was friends with Alison Fraser.
Oh,
She said,
she was the best.
she said, why didn't you record this? And I said, well, you know, Lizzie Borden is a pretty serious kind of music. They're not making fun of it or,
Right.
and
No.
I said, I think it would cost more money than I could possibly hope to break even. I was looking to break even, to not lose much money. That was my goal. And she said, the actors will do it for free. I said, really? And that's how that happened.
Amazing. I did not know until this minute that it was because of her.
Right.
Yeah, see, people want to
She's
leave
been
the
a
legacy.
champion of that. She said, I want to see that as downloads and anyway, because she's very proud of that, because it is. She's done 3 or 4 things. She's done Secret Garden.
Yep.
With
with Lucy.
Right?
Yeah. I know. She was, you know, it's so interesting because like with Sarah, you know, Alison really brought a new level to that character. And sometimes when you hear the right voice do the right thing, it changes your entire perspective. You just need that one person to sing the thing, to show, to make the move. It changes everything. And as a creator, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing somebody take a role and do more with it than you ever imagined.
Now,
Just like that.
For a small regional production, how many people would show up for Lizzie?
You mean to try out?
Right.
Oh, you know, this is the most heartbreaking thing about theater, is that there's so much talent and
So
not so many places to show it. I would just say a lot.
So there were other Lizzies that were pretty good.
That's not what I said. What I said was a lot of people wanted to do the role.
Okay.
You know, there's hunger. There's hunger in the musical theater world. And I see it still all the time. I meet people who are graduating all the time, doing degrees in musical theater. And there's, well, of course, now during the pandemic, everything's on hold. But even before, there was just more talent than could be really brought fairly to stage. However, Alison is her own, you know, it's her.
What is
she's her own thing.
It was then done afterwards without Alison.
Yes. Yeah. There was another production of it that I was not able to make.
There were 2 productions, I believe.
Yeah. Well, they were East Coast. One of them was in 2000. Was right when the Twin Towers, you know, right around there. And it's a shame to have, you know, in 2001 when it's a shame to have the events of the day overshadow your life's love.
Right.
But I couldn't choose to leave my infant and come to the East Coast. Sometimes you just have to say no.
Right. But has it been done since those other 2 productions?
Not
really?
Very small, non-equity, you know.
It'd be a bit strong for a high school.
Yeah, no, not in high
like a
school.
very adventurous high school.
Not in
Who
high school.
wants to be the killer? I want to be the killer.
No, but speaking of high schools, my favorite recording, getting back to Sunset Boulevard, uh, was the Glee recording with Chris Colfer of As If We Never Said Goodbye. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Oh my goodness. It's really worth looking right after right after we finish this, because I thought it was more moving than Streisand, more moving than any of the women that I've ever heard do the role. And not to belittle any of them, but there was something, because they're all fantastic, but there was something so poignant about Chris Colfer's delivery of this song in a high school setting. It just, it made everything.
But did they do anything else from Sunset Boulevard? Or is this,
No. They just took.
they're putting
No,
on a
they
show and this is a song.
Yeah, they just took, one-offs of a lot of songs in different shows. But it's worth it to see when something speaks, how many people it can speak to. I loved Glenn Close. I loved Patti LuPone. I love all this, but it's not the same as to see it in the mouth, from the mouth of an unexpected character and have it work so well with this beautiful voice in such a fresh setting. It wasn't in the show, it was in their show, and it still worked, and it was great.
Let's go to the Saga of Dr. Zhivago.
That's a 14-year saga.
Yes, that's a long saga.
Yeah.
What is the beginning of that?
I think it starts in an elevator with Julie Boyd from The Game, living in the same building as Lucy Simon, the composer of Dr. Zhivago. And they were talking, and Lucy said, I'm working on this exciting show, and I've got this great opera lyricist, opera and musical theater lyricist, Michael Corey, working on some stuff, but I feel like I need a female voice in there with him. And, and then Julie recommended me, and that's how I ended up on that project. And I fell in love with Lucy Simon and her music right away. And then I had a great time working with Michael Corey, because he is a book writer extraordinaire, and he's like in a way, there's a Sondheimian thing about the way that he thinks in such complex, brilliant ways about language and structure. And so it was like having my own Sondheim in the room. And I got to be the one who did all the more pop emotional stuff. So that's a role I like.
So how far along was the show when you joined the process?
Look, Zhivago had a history before me and before Michael. There was a whole other production of it. That's the crazy thing when people look at musicals, is that they think, oh, this is what it is. But they're not thinking about, oh, this is what it was, because it's iterative. So there was a whole other team with Lucy for a little while. I'm not quite sure about what happened with that. I just know that.
With workshop or things like that?
Yeah. And Michael was brought in, and then I was brought in. There was already a book writer that Michael was working with, Michael Weller, who's a playwright, that was his first musical, but Michael was also a lyricist who knew how to structure. So Michael and Michael jumped in and did a lot of stuff together. And then we had Des McAnuff as our director. So he is not shy for opinions either. So there were a lot of, cooks in that kitchen for a long time. And it took, oh my goodness, many workshops, La Jolla Playhouse, incubated productions twice. And then we had a real production there. We went to Australia, we did a production there. And then we ended up in New York. But that wasn't the end of the story, thankfully, right? Because when we finally ended up on Broadway, it was not a success on Broadway, and it's gone to be more successful in other parts of the world since Broadway. So you never know.
I bought what I thought was the first and perhaps only foreign recording of the Dr. Zhivago, and I hear there's another one coming out in November from Austria.
German one. There's a German one. There's Austrian. I think we have
Japan. Is Japan interested?
South Korea. We did a production, which was really lovely.
Is it very inexpensive to record over there? Maybe we should record the games and everything over there and bring.
Oh no! No, it's not at all. And who knows? The future of musical theater is so up in the air right now. I'm interested to know what you know about where things are going in terms of on air, not non-live theater, but live among.
Well, certainly with this, not live theater, there's so much being recorded just for the actors and for the fans. And now they're starting to charge money for it.
I think that's a great thing.
Let's go to the paper mill. There's
really?
Concerts.
Tell me.
Doing small shows. They're doing Pete and Keeley. That was originally done by Sally Mays. And
wow.
That's a two-person show, and there's another. But then Patty is doing a concert there.
So they're using the stage, and
I believe Goodspeed is doing the entire season that you can subscribe to watch, and they're doing bigger shows. They're not doing two-person shows or anything like that. And so
I think that might just be the future.
Because for me, being somewhat disabled, it's a real stretch to drive up to
get up there.
I'm in Connecticut, but it's a long, and then the parking, you cannot, the parking lot is in the lower level, and you have to walk up a flight of stairs. So I would pay $30 to see a stream of a show that.
I know that there are a couple of streaming services that are starting to do musicals. I know that from the other side. What's it called?
Broadway Direct is just started.
Yep. Yeah.
They charge $5.99.
Like a movie.
Reasonable enough, yes.
Like a movie. Think of how many more people you can reach.
There is a chain, the AMC chain, is showing movies. I thought, what are they charging? And it's $14.95, which is a little more than $5.99. But
no, I meant like a movie you rent from, one of the streaming services.
Right.
It's actually.
But they did
much better.
They did an Anna Karenina. I've been very fond of Anna. I did the one that played at the Circle in the Square that had the lyrics by Peter Kellogg and music by Dan Levine. And we did a recording of that with Melissa Errico.
Oh, great.
She did the original workshop and small little productions, but she was in her 20s and said, "Oh, we love you, but Anna can't be 20 years old." And even on Broadway, she was still, but by the time we did the record, she was okay.
Good.
She was old enough.
Right. Everything in its perfect time.
Right.
Yeah. Everything in its perfect time. I think that the concept of being able to do things streaming is going to open up a lot, actually, even though it seems like such a shame that nobody can be where,
I wonder whether the unions, I hear the unions are now, they want a piece of things. And if they want more than $30, you can't be as generous as if they're paying a $95 or $100.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, it's going to have to be the scale, the number of people that you reach, right, is going to be so much more. They could take just a smaller piece. Everybody would.
I would hope so.
Everybody would be okay.
So, no, yeah.
Right.
On the Dr. Zhivago, there's a wonderful video on YouTube about the making of the album. How did that? Who was involved in that? And that everyone should go to YouTube and watch that, right? Isn't that?
Sure.
You get excited. Wouldn't you get excited if you didn't be involved in the show, you wouldn't just say, my
Yes,
God.
yes, yes. And I actually think, you know, Lucy's music is so timeless. It's thrilling. There's just no way around it. And that's why I believe that that show will have, I was going to say its day. I think it'll have many days because the music touches so many people. And whether you're seeing it on YouTube, you know, or there'll be other productions of it, or it's something that they could do streaming, I think that it's going to hold up. I really do. And it was
But
such an
who
honor.
was involved in doing that video? Do you know who chose that? Did you think it was so exciting the
It
way
was
it was done?
beautiful. Yeah, it's
Talking to you
beautiful.
and everybody in the back and forth.
Yeah, I'm not even, you know, some of the things that happen with behind the scenes stuff, I'm not even sure. But it, you know, that was just, that was one of those things. We were lucky to have the moment. It didn't work the way we thought. We certainly had a lot of disagreement about which should take the foreground, whether it should be the love story or the war story. And in that show, we were pretty split between women, Lucy and I, and the guys about which one was more important. Obviously, Lucy and I were all about the love thing, and that's, you know, I think at the end of the day, that's what carries through. It doesn't matter what performance you're watching. Things that are timeless are more about emotions that take you to a positive place.
But is it
I believe.
possible that future productions could change a little of the balance and make it less political?
It'll never be less political because politics is at the heart of war, and it's maybe politics is, and maybe war and maybe politics are at the heart of, you know, the human condition in a way. But it's just a foreground background thing. So in other productions that I've seen, the love story is celebrated more, and the people who are watching, especially in European productions, people understand the backdrop of war because they've lived through it. We in America, I don't think we've
Remember
lived
the Civil War? Don't you remember?
almost.
Whether Johnny would
I
come marching home?
know. But, you know, at least until right now, we have not had a civil war. Talk to me in 6 months and let's see where we are. But, you know, if you're in a country and you've experienced part of that, it puts everything else in perspective, and a little goes a long way, right? So that you can get back to the key things that are going to lift you up out of that. Nobody needs to be reminded that much of the horror, right? Because, like I said, little dab will do you. Little dab will do you. But I do have very strong feelings that a classic score is a classic score, and I believe that Dr. Zhivago is a classic score.
I believe it is.
And honestly, you know, some of the best moments of my life were working with Lucy Simon. We had such a hilarious time together. You'd think that, and working on such a serious show, that everything was serious, and sometimes it was, but honestly, we cracked each other up left and right. And I felt like I had a real ally and someone whose music I looked forward to working with all the time. That's the other thing. You know, I think, look, I'm a relationship person. I think life is about the collaborative dance, right? So having someone like Lucy, who is so open to experimenting. What if we tried this? What about that? Let me tell, oh, I love that line of yours. Let me see how I can set it, right? That's thrilling to someone like me. I don't want to be a dictator in terms of how I write, right? And I don't want to be dictated to and say, here's the thing, you fill in the blanks, right? I think maybe that was part of why that experience with Andrew Lloyd Weber wasn't, you know, was not super satisfying. It was super great in an ego way, but it wasn't super satisfying in a creative way for me. It was more a chore. Where it's writing with someone like Lucy, that's just magical because you're doing the dance together. And I think that is the beauty of musical theater when you can get to that point. We had a lot of fun times with Michael Corey too, who, you know, he brought in so much, and we batted back and forth dozens of drafts. Sometimes we would just, like shining a shoe, you know, you got to find just the right thing, make it really.
How many different songs do you think you wrote over the 14 years?
Oh my goodness, 100?
You have Sheldon Harnick has a catalog of everything you ever. Can you, if I came to your house, can you show me 100?
Probably. How many does Sheldon Harnick have? 10,000?
Not 10,000, but you know, but
A lot, a ton.
he didn't have the music because I wanted to do some songs that were cut from The Body Beautiful. That was their first musical together.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, I have the lyrics, but Sheldon has his music at the New York Public Library. So we had to go to, Jerry was more inclined to get it, but they were in two different places. So Sheldon didn't remember. He said, oh, I can sing it. No, you could not.
Yeah.
The songs. And there were a couple of things he said. I said, I want to record everything. He said, I don't know if I want to, you know, I'm guessing you don't want to hear 100 different lyrics. Am I correct that you don't want a 4 or 5 CD?
No. Because I think in the end, it's only, you know, what's left that matters. It doesn't matter about all the rest. I mean, it's sort of interesting from a historical point of view, but really you want the things that nailed it, you know, not the ones you tossed. And look, oh God, I'm remembering Chess. Remember when Chess came out in 10 different versions? I don't know, maybe it wasn't 10. A number of different versions, number of different productions had different songs and different strategies.
There was a concept album, then the West End production, and then
it felt like they were changing it wholesale sometimes.
I believe many things in the UK were better. It's a story that was changed. They got a New York writer to, and that story. I didn't see it in London, so maybe I wouldn't have been fond. I'm not interested in chess. I don't understand chess. I think I understand checkers. I play checkers, and I think I know the mechanics of checkers.
All you need to understand about chess is someone else's story.
Well, that's a great. I think that was under the David James Carroll. I did a record with David James Carroll, and he had such a unique voice. And it's in Grand. Did you ever see Grand Hotel?
Yes, sure.
Was he in it then? He died. They took a long time to find out who was going to pay for the recording. It ran for years on Broadway. The New York Times said not much of a score, or didn't even mention the score. When Annie was done at the good speed, Walter Bird did not mention the songs. He mentioned the politics.
The what?
The politics. Now, there is some Hooverville, and there are things to be said, but that's not what it's about. It's about tomorrow and the dog.
Right? You're reminding me that I actually did the ASCAP musical theater workshop, and Martin Charnin was in it. Martin Charnin, who wrote the lyrics for Annie, was one of the judges.
Right.
Also instrumental. You know, when you have people who believe in you and see something in you, and they tell you, it can make the difference to make you go on and keep trying.
Talk to people who Stephen Schwartz is a very encouraging kind of guy. I mean, he doesn't love everything. He'll say everything you do is good, but he will point out what he really likes and say, I really was moved by that. Oh my God, you didn't like the comedy?
Comment like that. Right. One comment like that can sustain a career to a point where, you know, where you get somewhere else.
Yeah.
But look, it is, as we know, musical theater, it's not for the faint of heart or the faint of heart.
Right. Okay, well, I thank you very much for this, and I look forward on a personal level, just keeping in touch with you, and
You too. It was
You know,
great
you're
to
like,
come on here.
glad I got to know you because you were not able to come to the recording session for Lizzie Borden. So
Lizzie. Yeah.
when I called you a couple of weeks ago, that was our
And it was our first,
maiden conversation.
yeah, it was our first time. It was so much fun.
Good.
I'm so glad that you're doing these. And I love that you're not just going to the same old people.
Right. So I
Yeah.
have now two orchestra contractors. I said this stuff. I should have asked you the question. Who?
Yeah.
I think I've given the answer now, but I've asked people who could be associated with 140 musicals, and the answer is the contractor, because he has 10. John, do you know any contractor name? Not an area that John Miller. Do you know John Miller? Or
No. Tell me where Eric Stern fits in.
he's a conductor, mainly conductor.
He doesn't do anything on the other side there.
No.
Eric Stern, one of the most brilliant musicians I have ever had the honor of working with on Zhivago. Incredible. He could take a general idea and bring it to life. You know, it's all collaborative, right? He is a master, a musical master. And Lucy would have melodies and concepts, and he would just, is there a word, lushify? He would lushify them. He would make them monumental. That's the kind of people we need. You need him on this show. He'd be a great kind of interview.
Be happy to. Some people, you know, again, I couldn't track you down except through Facebook. Some reason the Facebook evidently
Social media.
Is there a rule that you cannot put a telephone number on Facebook? Because I believe they are removed.
No, I don't know. I feel like in these times it could be dangerous.
Sadly. I'm willing to take the chance if I can get an interesting interview out of it.
Put it up. You want me to have him call you?
Yes.
I'll have him call you.
Great.
All right.
Again, thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to you off air.
You too.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks again. Fivers.